Shubham Shri Guru Shujataha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitanscha Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Chishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayani Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most beloved worshipable Gurudev Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Astatarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable, beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Astotarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and to all the Vaishnavis. So yesterday we began chapter 4 and read a little bit into it. The title of the chapter 4 of Nectar of Devotion is Devotional Service Surpasses All Liberation. Why is this important for us? To know this particular philosophical truth, that devotional service, meaning pure bhakti, it surpasses all liberation.
So we don't become distracted that this liberation from suffering is itself a goal, or the goal of our life, that there's something far beyond.
Yeah, anything more? Devotional service surpasses all liberation. How does it surpass all liberation?
Well, it includes liberation because automatically one's relieved from suffering. But there's so much more than just...
Yeah, but the thing is that we've just heard so many shlokas by very great personalities proving this point, that they are not interested in liberation. They are not performing their activities of bhakti yoga for the purpose of getting liberated. If that becomes their objective, it's not pure bhakti. But the point that we have to understand is that pure bhakti is so powerful. It is so filled with nectar, with the highest transcendental experience that is possible for the jiva to attain, positive experience of the highest enjoyment, that such pure devotees, they have no desire. They are not prompted or motivated by any desire to get free from the sufferings of the material world by becoming liberated. That's not their objective. And this is the whole point. Because as we were studying in the very beginning, that devotional service has 6 different qualities. And one quality is moksha da lagutakrit. That means that it belittles the importance of liberation. It is so high that it belittles that. We just heard the quotation from Sri Bilva Mangal Thakur, how he was telling that I know that I have become so absorbed in you, O Krishna, in relishing your transcendental name, form, qualities. Yes. And that's in the previous chapter even, building up to this chapter. Bilva Mangal Thakur's statement. And he says, therefore, I see that liberation, mukti, in the form of the goddess of mukti, she's standing at my doorway with folded palms and requesting that she can do some service for me. But I have no interest in accepting her service. You see? You want to say something?
I was going to ask a question. In most people approach Krishna consciousness, or they desire to achieve Krishna consciousness because of a desire for liberation, right? From freedom from distress, or to gain riches, or even in being inquisitive.
The 4 types of pious persons.
Yes, but there is the kind of a, so I don't know, I'm just thinking back in my own history that that my desire was to finally once and for all understand what's going on in this world, and it was like kind of torture to not know.
Yes.
And so I was looking for relief, but then gradually, when across the path, then where our goals begin to change by the mercy of Guru and Vaishnavas, then it is that the process that that we may come with a desire for liberation, and then that desire, as we become more and more absorbed on the path and purification of the heart, then our goal. And we see that if you're comparing liberation with bhakti, that you're comparing relief from suffering with love of God. And you there's no comparison. There can be no comparison. But initially it appears, anyway, in my own estimation, that we may start out that way. Is that?
Yes. Well, of course, as we heard from Srila Prabhupada's explanation of Rupa Goswami's presentation, what is the eligibility of a candidate and so forth to accept devotional service, and then there's the 4 types of pious individuals. They have to at least be in that category to accept devotional service, right? And those are also in gradations, leading up to the 4th category, which is the jnani, one who's actually seeking knowledge of his relationship, okay? So when someone progresses in hearing Harikatha, and progresses in the execution of the devotional process, all of these lower goals, they automatically become very unimportant. Very unimportant, because it was emphasized very much. Prabhupada emphasized that one has to be in knowledge to embrace devotional service. That is a prerequisite qualification. So someone has to come to that point. So anyone can come at any stage. Krishna is embracing all the jivas in the category of pious jivas. But even piety is not a qualification. And piety is also another stumbling block, because that piety will implicate you in taking birth again, to enjoy the results of that. So pure devotional service gradually manifests. It is not that somebody comes in the beginning and they automatically have pure devotional service. That's supremely rare, okay? But whatever position that they're coming from, they are encouraged to adopt the process, and gradually, by the association of the pure Vaishnavas, by the association of the Shastras and hearing from them, then the heart becomes more and more purified and the anarthas become removed. Because it's these anarthas which are causing the manifestation of these lower material tendencies. So that's why Nashtak Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya is the key. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Real true bhakti will come by doing this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right?
And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam.
That's what it means. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya means hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and serving the pure devotee. There's 2 types of Bhagavats. Yes, so that's the whole essence of the processes in that verse. Yes, and all the abhadras, which are inauspicious, which are hampering our progress, they'll gradually be removed. You see?
Because Krishna has arranged this material world to be a place of suffering, and especially in this earthly plane, it's like a little bit of happiness, a little bit of suffering, so it's like quite disturbing to be in, happy and distressed at the same, time. So the desire to get out of that is a desire for liberation, and yet if we stumble into a pure devotee's path with a desire of liberation, then we're going to, then that's going to be purified.
Well, first of all, we have to make a little distinction between the desire for liberation and these other desires. It's not exactly these other 3 desires besides the jnani, the 4 types. Okay?
But the
Arto,
suffering is there for most jiva souls, isn't it?
yeah.
For
The
all
suffering
jiva souls?
is the impetus.
So
the
we're
suffering-
turning it out of the suffering, that's a desire
Yes.
for liberation.
No. What I'm saying is desire for liberation is very specific. Okay? Desire to get out of the suffering or to get wealth or this or that, that's different than the desire for liberation.
Is it a desire to get out of the, like if you're poor, then you don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, but the desire to gain wealth, there are three types, right? Arto, jigyasur, artarti. Arto means one who is desiring wealth. Jigyasur means one who's inquisitive. And arti means one who is suffering, okay? So they turn to the Lord for relief from this. It doesn't mean that they're turning to Him for liberation, merging into His existence and so forth.
It's a kind of liberation, though. Liberation from suffering. I'm not talking about merging into the Supreme One.
I know.
Because liberation, there's different kinds, so many.
But when it's talking about mukti, we're specifically talking about liberation.
That kind of liberation.
Ending of the suffering of birth and death and so forth, but impersonal liberation. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ji Ki Jai.
It's interesting. It's just interesting.
Well, we heard the last thing yesterday was how Rupa Goswami is quoting from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, where Shukadev Goswami is telling Maharaj Parikshit, the great soul King Bharat was so much attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna that he very easily gave up his lordship over the earthly planet and his affection for his children, society, friends, royal opulence, and beautiful wife. Why? Because he was so much attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. Very easily, he gave up all those things. He was so very lucky that the goddess of fortune was pleased to offer him all kinds of material concessions. But he never accepted any of these material opulences. King Bharat. So Shukadev Goswami praises this behavior of King Bharat very highly. And he says, any person whose heart is attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudan, he does not care even for that liberation which is aspired to by many great sages, what to speak of material opulences. So, if somebody does not hear Srimad Bhagavatam, how are they going to develop this attraction to the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord? How is their heart? No, I'm saying
you're
this.
saying.
Because it says here,
Oh my God,
because it says here, any person whose heart is attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudan, does not care, even for that liberation which is aspired to by many great sages, what to speak of material opulence. My point is that there is no other way of becoming attracted, for your heart to become attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unless you're hearing about Him from Srimad Bhagavatam. And you're associating with the pure Vaishnavas whose hearts are attracted, right? And hearing from them. Then automatically, the desire for material opulence, for liberation, it will automatically become very insignificant. Now, in the Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 11th chapter, verse 25, there is a similar statement by, yesterday I told at the end of the class what we're going to hear today. Vritrasura.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? 6th canto. So Vritrasura, he's addressing the Lord as follows. Now, who is Vritrasura? Who is this gigantic demon, Vritrasura, who was so powerful that Indra had to go to such extremes to try to defeat this demon. But who is this person in the body of this demon, this Vritrasura, huh? Which one?
I can't remember his name. It starts with a C.
Chitraketu.
Chitraketu Maharaj. Yeah.
He's Chitraketu, and why did he have to take the body of a demon?
Did he
He
offend
offended Parvati.
He didn't offend Parvati.
She thought
Parvati felt
she took
offended
Yeah.
because he laughed
Yeah.
when she was sitting naked on the lap of Lord Shiva in front of so many sages. But he wasn't laughing to ridicule. You know what he was laughing?
Yeah.
Gurudev explains, because he's a godbrother actually. Chitraketu is a godbrother of Lord Shiva because both of them worship who? Anantadev.
Oh.
Yes, they both worship. So he was laughing out of like a jovial
Delight. It was
delight. Just see
see. Look at
how
my Lord
absolutely transcendental,
Yeah.
unconnected with any material desires Lord Shiva is. He can do this in front of sages. But because he was laughing, Parvati thought, oh, he's laughing at my husband. I curse him to become a demon. So he came down from his airplane, right, and bowed down and accepted the curse. He accepted the curse. So he took that form, but actually he was a devotee. Although outwardly, very powerful, ferocious, probably quite frightening appearance of a demon, right? But the prayers that he offered, those are very significant. If you go to the top level of Rup Sanatan, they're written on the wall there.
Oh.
Yeah, they're written there. So, here, Vritrasura is addressing the Lord as follows. Because when Indra was about to defeat him, he was actually cutting off with his arms and so forth. And Vritrasura was rejoicing. He was rejoicing. Why? Because very soon he's going to again attain a body in which he can be so close with the Lord. So he made this statement. He said, "My dear Lord, by leaving your transcendental service, I may be promoted to the planet called Dhruvaloka, the pole star, or I may gain lordship over all the planetary systems of the universe. But I do not aspire to this, nor do I wish the mystic perfections of yoga practice, nor do I aspire to spiritual emancipation. All I wish for, my Lord, is your association and your transcendental service eternally." 4 prayers he made. So this statement, it is confirmed by Lord Shiva in Srimad Bhagavatam 6th Canto 17th chapter, verse 28, wherein Lord Shiva addresses Sati thus: "My dear Sati, persons who are devoted to Narayan, Krishna, are not afraid of anything. If they are elevated to the higher planetary systems, or if they get liberation from material contamination, or if they are pushed down to the hellish condition of life, or in fact, in any situation whatever, they are not afraid of anything, simply because they have taken shelter of the lotus feet of Narayan. For them, any position in the material world is as good as another." I remember many months ago when we were reading Prabhupada's diary a little bit in New York, his New York diary. And I always recall there's one entry that he made at one point in which he was quite alone. You know, things hadn't really started getting off the ground much at that point. Nobody showed up for his, but he still put his on his tape recorder. He did kirtan and so forth, right? But on another occasion he was expressing how, oh, now the festivities are going on in Mayapur Navadvip Dham for Gaur Purnima, and there all the devotees are enjoying all of these festivities. But I am alone here. But I do not mind. I do not mind. Because as long as I can execute my mission, right? As long as I have facility to execute my mission, which is whose mission? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He said, then I am willing to go to hell as long as I have facility to execute my mission. Just see. So for them, any position in the material world is as good as another. So there is a similar statement by Indra, the king of heaven, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto, 18th chapter, verse 74. There, Indra addresses Mother Diti in this manner. He says, my dear mother, persons who have given up all kinds of desire and are simply engaged in devotional service to the Lord, they know what is actually their self-interest, their swa-artha, svartha, what is really their true self-interest. They know that. They've given up all kinds of desires. They're simply engaged in devotional service to the Lord. They know what is actually their self-interest. Such persons are actually serving their self-interests. And they are considered first-class experts in the matter of advancing to the perfectional stage of life. So, everyone has self-interest. Otherwise, you're not a living entity if you don't have self-interest, right? Every living entity, even in the lower species, ahara, nidra, bhaya, maitunam. What is their interest? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. They're always pursuing this. I have this experience with our little friend here who roams around with his white fur. Okay? I have experience with this. I never had a dog in my life before. I mean, I never had a dog when I was young as a pet or anything like that, you know? But now I'm realizing that there is not a single moment when he is not alert for his self-interest. Yeah, isn't it? One of these four things are going on at every single moment, whether he's asleep at 11 o'clock at night or whatever. But he's ready at any moment to serve his self-interest. And in exchange for that, he shows subservience, obedience, and loyalty, and all these things.
I have seen some selflessness in Dharma. Yeah.
Selflessness.
Selflessness.
Okay.
The night before last, he walked me home.
Yeah.
And we got to close to my house by the compost pile.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in front of me. Huge dog. And he was really barking and growling and backing up. And he was pushing me back up the path. And I'm like, Dharma, what's going on? And he, in other words, there was some animal there that he was afraid of. And I'm like, oh my God, there's an animal that he's afraid of, and he's so big. Like, it could only be like a mountain lion or a bear, right? Unless he barks at squirrels and stuff, but it was really serious. And so for a little while I thought, well, maybe it'll go away. You know, he was barking and growling really loud. Maybe it'll go away. And he's pushing me back up the path. And then I said, okay, Dharma, let's go. And he turned around and he just ran, and I ran too. And we ran back up the path and back to the temple, and then I took the car home. But
then you took the what?
I took my car home. My car was here, but I wanted.
Are you talking about this compost pile here, or the one
I
way
have
over
a compost pile by my house.
Oh, okay. So you were all the way over there.
Yeah, we had gotten all the way
And
home.
then Dharma brought you all the way back.
He pushed me up. He was pushing me backing up, and I was not ready to give in because I was almost home. It wasn't dark.
Right.
But I finally realized there's some animal that he is afraid of, and that's
like a rattlesnake.
It was something big, something by the compost pile. So then when I said, okay, Dharma, let's go, then he just like sped up the hill and and then I went running after, and there was no reward for him. He didn't get a piece of bread or anything, like usually when he walks me home I give him something, but there was no reward for him. He just, it seemed like he was protecting me. Maybe he was protecting himself, but some of it.
Well, look, that's a beautiful story, and and we all like Dharma so much, but actually,
he's a dog.
Yeah, he's in the body of a dog, and what I'm saying is that even in the lower species of life, the motivation of the living entity is coming out for them to attain their. This is his this is his job. He gets paid for doing his job. Okay.
Yeah, that's his job.
Certainly there's some affection, but it's really always about ahara, nidra, vaya, and maitana. Okay, that's all that the animals in the lower species are involved in. They don't have a higher preoccupation with their intelligence than that. So what I'm saying is swarta. Swarta means self-interest. And the thing is that this is what Prahlad Maharaj speaks about. Nate vidu swarta gatim hi vishnum. That famous verse. Nate vidu swarta gatim hi vishnum. Prabhupada quoted this verse many times in his purports. Because here it says swarta gati. And he translates swarta gati as the goal of one's self-interest, because gati means goal and swarta means self-interest. So he's saying here, Prahlad is saying, nate vidu, they don't know, swarta gatim, that the goal of their true self-interest is Vishnu. They don't know this. Who is they? Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. They means the conditioned souls. They're acting for something that they consider to be the goal of their self-interest, but they don't know that the true goal of the self-interest of every living entity is Vishnu. Because why? Because he's the very soul of the soul, and really the soul is seeking that connection and that relationship with him in all of their endeavors to please their self. But when someone begins to realize through bhakti that in actuality, Krishna is everything. He's everything. If I don't have Krishna, I have nothing. Whether I have the opulence, just like we heard of Richasura saying, even the pole star and high opulence, I don't want this. I only want you. You see? So the devotee begins to realize this. In devotional service, this realization becomes very clear that my senses, Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam, Bhaktir Uchate, the service of my senses to the Lord's senses is actually bhakti. That's what's called bhakti. And anything besides that is not bhakti. If I'm serving my senses or anyone else's senses besides the Lord's senses, it's not bhakti. That's why anukulyena Krishna anushivanam. Krishna anushivanam. No one else. Bhakti is for Krishna, for the benefit of Krishna. So that love, that loving mood is what will develop in the devotee. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam is showing all the different degrees of this loving mood and tendency to the Supreme Lord in all of his different forms and incarnations and so forth. And then finally coming up to Brihad Bhagavatamritam, right? Where the essence of all is the Brijbasi's love. And then within Brijbasi's, and the gopis, and ultimately Srimati Radhika. So, this should be understood, because Swarta is a very important subject matter. It actually pervades our life continually, every single moment of our existence. What is your Swarta? What is your self-interest? Because when one realizes that I'm not this body, as we already spoke. That's a prerequisite for devotional service, right? Realizes I'm a tiny, finite part and parcel, and Krishna is infinite, and my relationship with him is permanent, eternal, that I'm his servant. So these realizations become very deep by someone who's advancing on the path of pure bhakti. And then when by that advancement one comes to the stage of nishta and then ruchi, then one becomes completely thoroughly immersed in the nectar, ruchi, such taste of doing everything, every single moment, my mind, my body, my words, everything for Krishna. See? So, as Lord Shiva told to Sati, my dear Sati, persons who are devoted to Narayan, to Krishna, they are not afraid of anything. There's no fear at all. Nothing. No fear. If they are elevated to higher planetary systems, or if they get liberation from material contamination, or if they are pushed down to the hellish condition of life, or in fact in any situation whatever, they are not afraid of anything. Simply because they have taken shelter of the lotus feet of Narayan. For them, any position in the material world is as good as another. So that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur can pray in his beautiful prayer. Manasa deha geho yo kichumwa. He's saying, Kita janmahau jata tua dasa. He said, even if I have to take birth in the body of an insect, Kita means insect, as long as I can be your das in that body, I will accept that. But even if I take birth as Brahma, but I'm not your das, I will not accept that. Any position, as long as I can serve you, is acceptable. This is beyond our comprehension. How the pure devotees can be in such exalted state. And that's only possible because they're actually realizing their direct relationship with the Lord through bhakti. With their senses, they're serving the Lord's senses, and they are tasting the nectar of devotion. There is a similar statement by Indra, the king of heaven, in Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto, 18th chapter, verse 74. There, Indra addresses Mother Diti in this manner. My dear mother, persons who have given up all kinds of desire and are simply engaged in devotional service to the Lord, they know what is actually their self-interest. So such persons are actually serving their self-interests, and they are considered first-class experts in the matter of advancing to the perfectional stage of life. So in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 25, Maharaj Prahlad says, my dear friends born into atheistic families, who's he talking to? His schoolmates. My dear friends born in atheistic families, if you can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then there is nothing more rare in this world. In other words, if the Supreme Lord Krishna is pleased with you, then any desire you may have within the core of your heart can be fulfilled without any doubt. As such, what is the use of elevating yourself by the results of fruitive activities, which are automatically achieved in all events by the modes of material nature? It's just the modes. And what is the use for you of spiritual emancipation or liberation from material bondage? If you are always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord and always relishing the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, then there is no necessity for any of these. So by this statement of Prahlad Maharaj, it is clearly understood that one who takes pleasure in chanting and hearing the transcendental glories of the Lord, he has already surpassed all kinds of material benedictions, including the results of pious fruitive activities, sacrifices, and even liberation from material bondage. So again and again, we're seeing all these different quotations from the Shastra showing that everything else is inferior to the devotional service of the Lord and really cannot even hold a candle in comparison. Similarly, in the 7th canto, 8th chapter, verse 42, when the demigods are offering prayers to Lord Nrsimha, Indra, the king of heaven, says, so that's coming around the corner, Nrsimha Chaturdasi, yes. And after he killed Hiranyakashipu, then the demigods came, and he was so ferocious and so angry that none of them dared to approach him. Even Lakshmi Devi, they requested her, but she said, I haven't seen this form of my husband before, so.
No way.
Then they said, the demigods, Brahma, Prahlad, he is manifested for you, so you should go to him. Prahlad had no fear at all. And Lord Nrsimhadev was roaring tumultuously. The whole universe was practically cracking from his roaring. So somehow or other they had to calm him down. Because he had already killed Hiranyakashipu. He had already destroyed all of the army of Hiranyakashipu, ripped them apart, and threw them in all directions. And he was so angry. But what was his anger? What was Lord Nrsimhadev's anger? Pure love. This is Vatsalya. Vatsalya. To protect his pure devotee. Such a beautiful story is Lord Nrsimhadev's story. How he comes to rescue his pure devotee. So, all the demigods then, they began to offer prayers also, after Prahlad offered his prayers. Then one by one, now Indra, the king of heaven, he said to Lord Nrsimhadev, O Supreme One, these demons talk of our share of participation in the performances of ritualistic sacrifices. Because the demigods, they participate. But the demons, they're talking about that. How the demigods are participating in the performance of these ritualistic activities. But now, Indra says, but simply by your appearance as Lord Nrsimhadev, you have saved us from terrible fears. Actually, our shares in the sacrificial performances are due to you only, because you are the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices. You are the super soul of every living entity, and therefore you are the actual owner of everything. So long were our hearts always filled with fear of this demon Hiranyakashipu. But you are so kind toward us that by killing him, you have removed that fear from within our hearts. And you have given us the chance to place your lordship within our hearts again. For persons who are engaged in the transcendental loving service of your lordship, all the opulences which were taken away from us by the demons, they are counted as nothing. Devotees do not care even for liberation. What to speak of these material opulences? Actually, we are not enjoyers of the fruits of sacrifices. Our only duty is to always be engaged in your service, for you are the enjoyer of everything. So the purport of this statement by Indra is that beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no living entities are meant for enjoying the material opulences. That's what we have to get through our very dull brain. We are not the enjoyers. This tendency to be the Purusha is our problem. So, Lord Indra, the purport is that even Brahma and even down to the insignificant ant, no living entities are meant for enjoying the material opulences. They are simply meant for offering everything to the Supreme Proprietor, the personality of Godhead. And by doing so, they automatically enjoy the benefit. That's real enjoyment. When everything is offered to the Lord and He is pleased, then that's real enjoyment. The example can be cited again of the different parts of the body, collecting foodstuffs, cooking them, so that ultimately a meal may be offered to the stomach. And after it has gone to the stomach, all the parts of the body equally enjoy the benefit of the meal. So similarly, everyone's duty is to satisfy the Supreme Lord, and then automatically everyone will become satisfied. Gaur Premanandi. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Shri Nectar of Devotion ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.